the difference between getting a lower electricity price from reforming poles and wires is that you get into consumers' pockets money that was going to disappear.
Yeah.
Whereas in the case of carbon pricing, if you remove carbon pricing, you also remove the government revenue. And while people get their tax cuts anyway under current policy, there's a hole in the budget.
Yeah.
And we have a dreadful problem in our budget looking forward, and it's been getting worse ever since 2011. But the worst problem is beyond the 4-year budget estimates, and that's when the big costs of alternatives.
I want to explore that with you.
Yeah.
So what's coming down the highway at us in terms of the period outside this so-called 4-year forward estimates period, the budget period?
Well, while I've called the book Dog Days, and there's more of the book about how we avoid things getting too bad, rather than just talking about how bad things are going to be. Yeah. So if you're talking 4 years out, the first thing you've got to say is how bad it is will depend on what we do about it.
Yeah.
And the core of any sensible strategy will be to make sure we have a big real reduction in the exchange rate.
Yeah.
If we get that early, and that's not as easy as it sounds. So people have got to pull their belts in a bit because there'll be some price increases result from that. But if we do that right, then there's a reasonable prospect of stopping the decline in employment, stopping the decline in business profits, returning to some economic growth, decent economic growth in this 4-year period.
Yeah.
If we do all that, then the budget won't look too bad.
Yeah.
It's still got a hard job. But it won't look too bad after the 4 years.
Yeah.
But if we don't do that, then there's no reason to think the budget will improve at all. And this lift in the debt ceiling from 300 to 500 billion that the Treasurer is talking about, that won't be enough. He'll be back asking for 700 billion.
Yeah. I thought I'd just explain this fall in the real exchange rate that you're talking about. So the exchange rate that's published compared with the US dollar is the most common comparison, and it's now, 94 cents?
94, yeah.
94 cents. It was $1.03 in when the May budget was brought down, so it's come down. But you're saying it needs to come down further, into the 80s, I suppose?
Well, when it was up 103 to 105, I said it has to come down 20 to 40%.
Yeah.
Now, that's a pretty wide range. That says early 60s to early 80s.
Yeah.
And why it's a wide range is it does depend on how business responds.
Yeah, sure.
So you learn that as you go along.
Yeah.
But we don't, there's no hope of a solution until we get down to the early 80s.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's enough, we'll find out later.
And the second part, you talk about the real exchange rate, because as you say, when the exchange rate comes down, the price of imported goods and services goes up. And if we then compensate everyone for those higher prices, then the real exchange rate hasn't fallen.
That's right.
And that's what determines the competitiveness.
That's right, yeah.
And so what you're saying is that the general community will need to take a bit of pain and not expect that when the price of computers goes up, or iPads and so on, because they're imported and they go up, that they somehow go to the government, and the government says, all right, we'll increase your government payments, your family payments or something. So they have to take a bit of pain.
Yeah, and wages and profits of business.
Yeah.
It's the issues there right across the community.
So if everyone takes a bit of pain, then at least that means that it's fairly distributed, because if you don't do that, it's rising unemployment, and that's unfairly distributed because the people who lose their jobs bear the burden.
That's right. And